番組の途中ですが、簡単なアンケートを行います。左の新卒くんと右の引きこもりくん、あなたはどちらが嫌いですか？ご回答ありがとうございます。嫌われ者の哀れな新卒くんには、今すぐ直ちに即刻消えてもらいましょう。
Hello everyone, it's Luli, and today I'm going to be doing a review on the visual novel Process of Elimination. But before I start, note that although I would not consider any of what I include in this video spoilers, I'm aware that what you consider spoilers and what I consider spoilers may not quite align. So if you're even a little bit sensitive and you don't even want to know what's on the website, for example, then I would swiftly move on. But anyway, let me start. So firstly, I would like to thank all of my patrons as well as those who like and comment on my videos. It really helps my video boost up in the algorithm, and so I greatly appreciate it. Also, as is always the case, question of the day, do you enjoy detective games? My answer is I do, which is one of the reasons why I played this game and enjoyed it. Now, plot summary. What does Process of Elimination consist of? So, it's based in a world that's terrorized by this murderer called the Quartering Duke. He basically, it's kind of gross, and bearing in mind those who are a bit squeamish about gore and blood and all of those things, you probably don't want to play this game because already at the start, there's like a gory moment, and we're not talking like Danganronpa pink blood, we're talking like actual red blood, so bear that in mind. But this is about the Quartering Duke, who is this murderer that's like slashing people's bodies until they die. They kind of make a show out of it, and it's caused a lot of like problems in society essentially. Now the main character is actually a detective in training. He ends up being called incompetent detective actually, which is quite funny. But anyway, he gets scouted to be part of the Detective Alliance to kind of figure out who this Quartering Duke is. And as a result, he ends up on this secret island where he meets all of these other characters. So the world is kind of this eerie feel because the Quartering Duke is a serial killer who, as I said, rips apart people. And this has spurred on more killings because what's happened is other serial killers like, oh my god, I want to do what the Quartering Duke is doing. And then they would be like a copycat killer, or they would do something similar, or it's almost like kind of justified killing and like made it such a normal thing that detectives are busier than ever. And yeah, as you can imagine, that's a nightmare. And unfortunately, no one knows who it is. I guess that's why the Detective Alliance has also been quite busy, and kind of this is the story of figuring out who it is. So it's quite, I quite liked it. So this game actually has gameplay elements, and although it's primarily a visual novel, I'd say like 80% of it you'll be spending reading, it does have a tactical gameplay element as well. So think of something like Fire Emblem, where you've got your little characters and you move them on what is kind of almost like a board, and each of the characters have different sort of levels, I guess, for each of these attributes. You've got inference, for example, which is when a character is able to like solve things, like put all the clues together and figure out what happened. You've got analyzation, which is sort of the character's ability to take a clue and analyze it. Then you've got inspection, which is how much a character is able to inspect and like find things in their vicinity. And got assistance, which is basically when a character can move next to another character and assist them, and sometimes their assistance level is higher than, let's say, their inference, in which case you kind of want to just use those characters to help others more so than them to actually do the work. And then you've got movement, which is how many squares a character can move, and each of these points either sort of kind of represent how far that character can, let's say, for example, inspect or move, or it's the number it kind of helps reduce, let's say, if you were to try and infer something, because sometimes you get these things that pop up with a number on it, and then you'll need a several number of inference points in order to sort of figure out what happened basically, and that obviously kind of requires some thinking, especially as there is a limited amount of time. It's kind of like that situation where they're like, oh, 8 hours remaining, and then each round will be sort of an hour, so to speak, and basically it does require some thinking, because some levels, they're all quite different in that it's not always just about looking for clues and putting things together. It's also, there might be enemies you have to avoid, or like there will be other things in each of the level that you have to be mindful of, which makes each of the levels quite entertaining to play. Now, my suggestion during this gameplay is, of course, what you can do is get all the characters to inspect as much as possible to get as many clues as possible, and then do a preliminary investigation, which is kind of like when they analyze, they either find the clue or they analyze the clue, and then once you've done that, certain other things can pop up. So for example, you might choose to make character A inspect somewhere, do preliminary, and it gives you a clue, and then you can move another character to analyze that clue, which means you've got 2 things done before you click investigate, which is like the final thing you do. But I'm sure all of this will be explained in the game, so I will kind of leave you to explore that. Another thing is, of course, it's a visual novel, which means every now and then you will be sort of given choices that will affect your kind of trust, or sort of, especially during the investigation periods, there will be a moment when the main character's like, so this is what happened, and it will be like, oh, and this is what so and so did, and if you pick the wrong one, the number of like these diamonds decrease, and if it goes to 0, it's game over. If you manage to get them completely full, you get like a maximum rank, because at the end of each of these investigations you do get given a rank. Sometimes it's a lot easier, other times not so much, so bear that in mind. And of course you can use a walkthrough to pick the correct answers, however that kind of loses the fun maybe when it comes to a game like this, but yeah, bear that in mind. So the number of time Process of Elimination took me to complete is basically 25 plus hours. It took me probably about 20 hours to complete the game once, and then 5 hours to like kind of go through and collect all the other keywords, or these things called residual thoughts that appear after you've played it once. So I guess if you only care about the story, then, it will only be 20 hours. But if you're like me and you get all like completionist about things when it comes to visual novels, then yeah, it'll probably take you about 25 hours. On the eShop, it is £35.99 or $39.99. So that's kind of the price. And I guess it kind of makes sense. VNs tend to be on the pricier side, unfortunately. Now, who would I and would I not recommend this game to? I would recommend this game to those who like VN games in general, so like visual novels. And then if you like gameplay alongside the visual novel, then it's perfect for you, because it's like giving you both. As I said, it's like 80% reading, so it's primarily more of a visual novel than like a gameplay type game. So bear that in mind if you are thinking about getting this game. I would also recommend it to those who enjoy games like Danganronpa. It was very similar in that someone would die and you'd be like, oh my god, who is it? And who did it, basically. And in that sense, it was quite exciting, because you're always a bit worried, like, could the quartering Duke be this person, or could it be that person? And your like brain is constantly trying to pick up on hints, and that's quite fun. And one more thing is, I would recommend it if you like feeling emotional, because what's weird and more unique about this is, I think because you often see the characters sort of interact together and they form bonds and things, when someone dies, you're actually like, why did they have to die? Like, why? This is horrible. And you like feel really sad about it. But I don't know about you, but personally, when I was playing Danganronpa, when someone died, I didn't actually feel, I know this makes me sound so heartless, but when in Danganronpa someone died, I was like, oh, that's a shame. Okay, let's find out who it is, right? But in this, I was like, oh, no, why? Why couldn't they just survive? You like feel really awful, especially for the person who that person was a friend to, for example. And it actually affects you a tiny bit and you wish they hadn't died. And I thought that was interesting and like a difference between this and a game such as Danganronpa, which I felt was worth noting. Now, who would I not recommend this game to? I would not recommend it to those who don't like reading. I guess. Actually, this is a visual novel, which means it's mostly sort of reading about what's happening, that sort of thing. Think of like a manga or, you know, a book or something combined with voice acting. If you're not into that, then this may not be for you, because there is gameplay, but there is definitely a lot more reading. So bear that in mind. Also, I would not recommend it to those who want something like action-packed and things happening constantly. In this game, it felt like there were a lot of slice of life elements, which in a way is kind of, it could be felt as boring to some. But on the other hand, I think it's thanks to those moments that perhaps you feel emotional when someone dies. So that's kind of something to weigh out and consider if you're wondering whether this game is for you. So that's kind of who I would not recommend it to. Now, finally, my general thoughts and rating. I would say this game is a solid 7 out of 10 for me. It was quite fun, but I felt at times it was a little slow. So I really liked the story. I liked, when someone sort of died and you had to figure it out and like all the emotional stuff. I loved it so much, but sometimes it felt slow because, you'd have to read that they're going searching for clues or that they're, having lunch together and as I said, it's probably because of that when someone dies, it feels emotional, but like at the same time, you're kind of like, yeah, I get it, if you know what I mean. So I mean, if you enjoy that and if you like watching the interactions between characters, then that's perfect. But if you're like me, where you get very impatient and you just want to know what's happening, then, it might feel a little bit slow. And I would have liked more gameplay. I understand that this is a visual novel, so it only makes sense that there was, it was mostly reading. But because I enjoyed the gameplay so much, because I love sort of tabletop strategy, I was a tiny bit sad that there were so few moments to get to do this gameplay, and in fact my second playthrough I felt was more fun because like you could skip past all of the text because it was literally like skip to next option function, so you could just skip through and it felt like just playing the game one after the other and then trying to get like the highest rank. So I actually kind of preferred that, but again I understand this is mostly a VN, and then perhaps some people actually may prefer that it's mostly reading, especially if you struggle with games and such. And finally, I liked how it concluded. So, a lot of games I feel there are like plot holes or there are things left unanswered and you're like, but what about this? What about that? This game, they really brought it all together in the end. So all your questions that you may have sort of had throughout the game are pretty much answered, and I like how it concluded, and I liked who the Quartering Duke turned out to be, because it was all just, I don't know, it was satisfying, I didn't kind of sit there feeling left behind. It was very much, oh, okay, that makes sense, okay, cool, well now we know, type of thing. And yeah, I like that, because a lot of times games do kind of leave you sitting there going, but what about this or what about that? But no, this one did basically put all loose ends together and summarize it so you could understand what was going on and what was happening. But yeah, so solid 7 out of 10 for the Switch edition. But that concludes my Process of Elimination Switch review. Hopefully you found that helpful and now you know whether to buy the game or not, or whether it's suitable for you. As is always the case, thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and hopefully I will see you in another one of my videos or streams. Bye!